Explaining that a little bit, it originated with a major government. And in fact, Kenneth Clarke just recently claimed credit for it and said that actually Labour's hospitals built in the 2000s were all funded by the PFI, which was my idea. So I think we'll give him credit for it. It was his idea. And it was originally described as a privatisation of provision of capital. So it meant that, and actually that's what it is entirely. Because what it meant was, instead of getting treasury funding to build new hospitals, which had been the way every previous hospital had been built up to mid-1990s, up to 1992-3, Enoch Powell, in the right-wing Tory government of the 1960s and 70s, Enoch Powell's hospital building plan for England and Wales built 100 new hospitals, none of which were privately funded. It was all funded through the treasury. And yet, more recently, it's been clearly created that it's unthinkable to get treasury money, and in fact it's been put forward that PFI, the private provision of this money, is the only game in town. If you want to build a new, sizable new hospital, PFI is the only game in town. And what's happened is a massive reduction, alongside the introduction of PFI, a massive reduction in the availability of public sector capital for any projects at all. So it's not just hospitals, it's prisons, it's roads, it's bridges, it's all kinds of projects, schools, housing, street lighting, all kinds of things have been actually funded through PFI. So the idea is you open up a bit, you say we need a new this, that or the other, let's say a hospital, we need a new hospital, it needs to be this kind of order of magnitude, but we have to put a bid now in the office of the European Union's journals, we have to advertise it, we have to invite companies to put in bids, and instead of specifying exactly what hospital it is, you leave it up to the companies to propose different types of hospitals will be built. So you start off with a hospital, we want to refurbish a hospital. There's been some examples like that in Coventry. They wanted to refurbish the old hospital, the old Walsgrave Hospital. They wound up with a scheme for a brand new hospital with a private hospital inside it. They started off advertising it as, I think, about £50 million. It wound up £400 million, and one of the most expensive PFIs in the more recent wave of hospitals. It also takes years and years and years, involves huge amounts of legal costs, accountancy costs and so on. The bureaucracy is astounding. And of course, the private sector calls all the shots. The private sector knows that if you don't sign it, if the NHS doesn't sign a deal with them, that they can't have a new hospital. The NHS managers know that. The private sector has done these things hundreds of times. They've got high-quality lawyers from their point of view signing up these watertight deals. Managers go in expecting that they can negotiate with them and just get taken to the cleaners, and it happens time and again. And they go in, again, the Coventry one, they went in with the best and final offer to the final stage negotiations in Coventry, and it had already gone up to £176 million, and they came out with £400 million. The best, it wasn't best or final, and obviously that is the way PFI negotiations go. So the way these hospitals will be paid back is over 30 to 35 years, and it's what's called a unitary charge, which covers both the cost of the building itself, which obviously includes a nice profit margin for all those concerned in putting it together, but also support services. So non-clinical support services are normally included as part of that contract as well. So you wind up effectively, if you think of it as buying a new house, you not only buy on a very expensive mortgage, but you commit yourself to employing butlers and cleaners and gardeners for the full duration of your mortgage. And in other words, it's a profit stream for the consortium, is that they've got that additional line of work that is going on. If they normally take over car parking, retail outlets and so on, they get all the money from all of that, which used to flow into the trust as part of the trust revenues. And some of the most expensive hospital car parking in the country, in fact in the UK, is in PFI hospitals. I remember vividly going to the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, the new one up in the Greenfield site, and it had the most expensive hospital in Edinburgh other than the airport. It was the first hospital car park I've ever been in that had a credit card facility to pay £10 a day, I think it was, for the car park. So anyway, that's the basics of PFI. And since this scheme was introduced by the Tories never signed any deals. The Tories drew the plan up, but it was Labour who was prepared to go the full length and promise the private sector everything that they wanted, and the first deals were signed by the Labour government from 1997. Having denounced the PFI, they came around and said, we will rescue PFI and we will make it work. And they did that by surrendering completely to the private sector. So the first round of these deals were signed in 1997, and they included some very famous ones now: Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Woolwich, and Princess Royal Hospital in Bromley, the two which became the South London Healthcare Trust, which of course famously went bust 2 years ago, and 2 or 3 years ago, and created the huge crisis around Lewisham Hospital and so on, as the administrator came in and decided he couldn't save enough money by carving up what was in the South London Healthcare Trust. He had to actually take out Lewisham Hospital next door as well, which was nothing to do with the PFI, and completely separate trust. And had it not been for people standing up against that and challenging that in the street, then the legal fight would not have been waged, and that attempt would have been successful. So it's important to look at the fact that PFI has generally succeeded so far in gaining the inroads it has so far, because there's been insufficient campaigning, and because the campaigning has obviously been quite difficult. If you campaign against a new hospital being funded by PFI, the immediate response of those responding to you is to say, you don't want a new hospital then. And you say, yes, we want a new hospital. This is the most expensive way you could possibly pay for it. It would be cheaper to take a loan out from Wonga. You know, cheaper to pay for it on a credit card. So we now had about £12 billion worth of hospitals built under PFI. They're going to cost something like £80 billion to pay back. And even those averages are misleading. I've got a sample here, it's obviously too small for you to read, but I've got a sample here of some of these deals. These are 2013, the most recent figures published by the Treasury, which is where you get all the official figures from these things. And this sample, I think it's 20 of the more expensive PFIs. The total investment is £3,500 million. The total paid so far, up to March 2013, £7,272 million, so they paid already twice over the original cost of these PFIs. The amount still to pay, £29,568 million, and the total cost, £36,840 million. The average cost of these more expensive PFIs, 9.4%. Now, 9.4 times the actual original cost of the capital. Now, if you took out a basic mortgage, right, even at 6%, and paid it over 25 years, which is shorter than most PFI contracts, you'd own a house after 25 years, having paid about double the actual original cost of the house. You know, you can borrow money a lot cheaper than that now, but these deals are just coming in at these staggeringly high rates of return. I've got examples. Some of the more expensive ones are actually some of the surprising. They're not necessarily the biggest. But the most expensive one of all is one in Newham University Hospital. It's a small one, £35 million, but it's actually paying back 21 times the actual original cost of the PFI. There's another one here, Norwich Hospital, 14.4 times the original cost of the hospital. And that has been refinanced several times with huge windfall profits back to the shareholders concerned. We've got a whole variety of these. What's interesting is that the ones that are most expensive, in terms of the total value compared to the original capital investment, aren't necessarily the least affordable. So we've got Peterborough Hospital at the moment, which is one of the least affordable. It was told twice, the Trust was told twice by the Monitor, which regulates Foundation Trust, not to sign the deal. They signed it anyway, the Treasury signed it off anyway. And the unitary charge for the Peterborough Hospital is about £40 million, and their deficit from the day they opened the new hospital has been £40 million, and they've been getting that money each year from the Department of Health, because Peterborough Hospital is 35 miles from the nearest equivalent hospital, so they can't just shut it down. Even if you shut it down, you've still got to pay 35 years of the PFI anyway for the contracts they've signed. So you don't save any money by shutting a PFI hospital. You sometimes save money by shutting wards because you don't have to staff them, but then of course you're paying for those wards anyway. In Barts Hospital in London, it's a £1 billion hospital for 1,000 beds. So £1 million a bed. It's the most expensive hospital probably outside of the private sector. If you want a more expensive hospital per bed, the Circle Hospital in Reading was, I think, £33 million for 30 beds. So it's £1 million a bed, but they've got 250 beds they couldn't afford to staff, and they agreed as part of the cuts reducing the cost of the PFI to actually mothball these beds. They're paying for the building anyway. 3 floors of the 2 buildings, the Barts and the Royal London Hospital, are standing empty as a result of that, and they're paying the full cost of those 250 beds anyway. So this gives you an idea of the nonsense of PFI. It's a complete financial nonsense. Now the question is, what do we do about it? Because these deals have been signed, and we're stuck with the reality here. Until you can actually sweep away the system and just nationalise the whole lot, which would obviously be the best solution, or we'll just cancel these contracts and say, right, you've had your fun, off you go. You know. You know, and in fact we already own a couple of the banks that are ripping off which are still continuing to charge it. So that would be like the ultimate solution, but sadly we can't really do that. The worst possible answer is to buy them out, right? That's the worst possible answer, because it means all these companies get their full amount back and they're just encouraged to do more of it, and nobody learns anything. And actually, the NHS, nobody can actually afford to do it. You're talking about hundreds of billions of pounds overall in the whole, across the whole public sector. It's not an affordable solution, even if you thought it was a good idea. So that's the worst possible. So what can we do? First off, we have to demand the opening of the books of these deals. Well, first off, we have to demand no more of these deals ever signed. Right? No more PFI. Second off, we have to have these books open to scrutiny. Most of these contracts, even when they're published, they're heavily redacted. All kinds of details are left out. You normally have to go through a massively long process to get the contracts published in the first place. One union branch up in Wakefield, it took them 18 months under the Freedom of Information Act, including 3 rulings by the Commissioner, that they had to publish this contract before they published it. They published it with about 30 pages redacted, which included all the bits the union wanted, which was about the interest rates that were being paid and the relationships with staff and staff payments. It was all redacted, and it's still not being published now. So all these years later, we're still none the wiser about some of those aspects. These contracts have to be opened up. This is public money, and it's been misspent. And we need these contracts opened up so that we can identify those responsible, and where there's been actual fraud, we need to be prosecuting people. Yeah. And we can build campaigns where people know services are threatened. And PFI is threatening services now. In all these desperately unpayable contracts, the trusts are looking for ways of saving money. Other money is being siphoned out of other services to keep them afloat. So they're doing untold damage. And in Barts is a classic example where the cuts are being inflicted on Whip's Cross, on Newham Hospital, and on Barts and the London Trust. We're getting staff down-banded, we're getting staff cut, and we're getting cuts in quality of care, we're getting catastrophic and unacceptable cuts, and of course a bullying regime to go along with it. And congratulations, Charlotte Munro, finally getting reinstated. You can still get a result if you do hang on in there, and that's an important lesson. So we need to be looking at this, and we need to start from that. So we can't have individual trusts which have been pushed into these deals by the Treasury, by previous governments, saddled with these costs and cutting as a result. So one thing that is in the Pollock Bill for the reinstatement of the NHS is that these debts should be centralised with the Treasury. They're the cause of the problem. They should sort it out, and the Treasury should be charged both with reporting on what the status of these deals and also renegotiating them on the basis of fair value, which could mean that some money would come back, in some of the worst cases, back into the NHS. And I think that is the answer. So renegotiation sounds like a soft option. In reality, that's the only option that we've got without running the risk that, you know, if you just simply refuse to pay, you're going to have people coming to repossessing hospitals. There's going to be all kinds of huge legal ramifications going on. It's not possible. It is perfectly possible for a government to open these books up, to actually demand a full review of that by independent experts to come in, review these contracts and renegotiate them on the basis of fair value and get the best possible deal out of that, and where possible, obviously, send these people running. Because the other point that should be remembered is a load of these deals have been sold on now. They've been sold on there's a market in reselling the profitable bits of PFI. And that means now a load of them have been sold on to companies based in tax havens. This has been a theme, you know, not Virgin in this case, but other companies. HSBC is a particular offender and a subsidiary of HSBC, and we've got others which are based in Jersey and other tax havens, which are actually milking this money out. So the taxpayers' money is flowing straight into the pockets of private shareholders and so on. So we have to put a stop to this as well. And one thing should be that no repayment should go to companies that aren't based in this country and paying taxes. Yeah. We have to start from this. We have to defend the existing services. We have to say no cuts as a result of PFI, no more PFI, and let's force this problem back onto the governments that started it. Labour signed these deals, the Tories made them up in the first place. The Tories have been signing more of them while in office, even while complaining that Labour signed rotten deals. The Tories have been signing some rotten ones themselves while in office. All of these deals have to be reviewed and opened up, and all of these debts centralised with the Treasury, so that we can actually prevent the PFI not only ripping us off, but also axing our services. You know, it's bad enough to be ripped off, it's even more criminal if people are going to die as a result from the services not being available. Anymore, and it costs any more lives. We can actually win this one because governments can do these things, and we need to make sure we build enough weight of demand that actually forced on whichever government comes in after the next election. Thank you.